I want to get into all of this because you do discuss this in your book. It covers so many major royal flashpoints. We don't have time to talk about all of them, unfortunately, but it is such an interesting read. So your new book, The Windsor Legacy, A Royal Dynasty of Secrets, Scandal and Survival, is out now. So you've covered the royals for so many decades, but in your time researching and speaking to people for this book, what was the biggest shock or surprise for you that you've uncovered?
Well, funny, it was just one particular story. I mean, the actual book covers 100 years since the Queen's birth, and I thought it was a good position because next year issue would have been 100, late Queen Elizabeth. But obviously the major scandals over the years have been huge. But there was one story that jumped out at me, which as a journalist I thought was amazing, was that the Queen Camilla, when she was the Duchess of Cornwall, her staff were taking her jewels to Bryce Norton for a trip to Canada. And they stopped off for a coffee. Two of them went for a coffee. The other one, who was supposed to stay by the car, went off and had a cigarette, leaving the jewellery in the car. And can you imagine this happening? I mean, and then in that time, there was a gang operating in that area, and they stole the jewellery bag. It's like a scene out of the Keystone Cops. And then can you imagine going back to the car and then all the three of them looking at each other saying, what's happened to the jewels?
Someone's getting fired.
So they had to obviously make a call. And then they didn't bring in the police. They brought in intelligence services, and they tracked the gang, and a deal was done where the jewels were returned and nobody was charged. So it was actually that story. I was sort of open-mouthed that sort of thing could happen today. But really, I think...
Did anyone lose their job?
No, they didn't, funny enough. And I know the three names of the people that were were there. I don't suppose they'll be stopping off for coffee anytime soon. But there was a number of bigger issues. I think that there was a recurring theme of the problem of the spare. That did seem to come through, from the moment when you've got the issue of obviously the biggest thing that's hit the royal family in 100 years has been the abdication crisis. Much bigger than anything else. I think Meghan described it as the biggest story since the birth of Christ. So, it was at the time when it was being written about, when things were being blocked. So the abdication crisis, obviously, and how the spare had to step up, i.e. somebody, George VI, who was not prepared for the role, all the way through, from Princess Margaret and her problems with Townsend and the issues that arose there, and the fact that she couldn't marry the man that she loved, all the way through to... Andrew and now Harry. There seems to be a recurring problem that they hopefully will try to resolve before George and Charlotte are too much older.
I think there surely have been some key lessons learned in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe, you'd hope. So you delve into the relationship, as we mentioned before, between William and the King. So a lot of people are interested in this because it does feel like it's the two of them now against, there's a very, very small group of senior royals. So are they close, or what's that dynamic like?
No, Katie's right. Of course, they've realised in the last 18 months or so that they have to be, if you like, singing from the same hymn sheet. But that doesn't mean they necessarily have been close over the years. I mean, there's no doubt that Harry was very much more in tune with Charles, and Charles used to get on better with him. And sometimes William can be a little difficult. But there were issues over whether or not he should fly the helicopter with his family in it, and that led to rows between not only the late Queen but with Charles, saying you just can't do this. But he continues to do it. Issues over the Royal Collection, Ivory Collection and the Royal Collection. All sort of areas, he doesn't want to wear a kilt, things like this. All of these things, little tiny things that any friction may happen in any family, but I think essentially they realise that they may not necessarily have the same vision going forward, but the King, at 77, realises that his time, whatever it is going to be, he's not going to have a long reign, and that it's really the future is William's more than anything else. And I think in that respect, there's sort of a sense of, passing on the baton, even if, I think the King probably feels, from what I understand, that it's good to appeal to new people that don't necessarily support the institution, but don't forget the people that do support the institution and the traditions and the way things are done. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's all good appealing to a new electorate, if you like, but at the same time remember the ones that are why the people like the royal family as it is.
Very delicate balancing act. And And on Harry's relationship with the king, you write about that as well. And you had a very interesting new insight into about what actually happened during his very brief meeting with the king early last year, right after that cancer diagnosis was made public. You've written that the king may have told him a little white lie.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, I don't suppose you could say it was a white lie, really, because I wouldn't necessarily want to accuse the king of that. But the fact is, what happened was the king had telephoned Harry, and Harry had taken it upon himself to come over to Britain, which I think most children would think is fair, and you can understand his desire to do so. But at that time, I think the king was quite tired. He had just been given the diagnosis, was on quite a new regime of treatment. And I think he arranged. I know that what happened when they agreed to see his son, but didn't want to, after the initial meeting, go on and on, because he was quite tired. He wanted to go back to St Sandringham, and he arranged for somebody to come in and say there was a procedure that the king had to have. He didn't actually have to have a procedure. He had to get on a helicopter to go to Sandringham, but it meant that the meeting was cut down. And so if it had strayed into areas that were pretty wary, at that time, I don't think the king was particularly keen to be discussing money, the problems with his brother, other issues. It could just be a meeting to say, the father and son to get together.
And of course, in fairness, exactly as you said, the king had a lot on his plate at that time.
He just wanted a rest, I think.
Yes. And lastly on that, what about William and Harry? There's been so much made of Harry's attempts to reconnect with the UK in a number of ways this year, particularly with his dad. But what about William? What does their relationship look like 5-10 years from now? Is there a reunion?
I personally don't see it, but I mean, one can live in hope. I think that one thing that we've seen through history, we saw with George VI and his brother when, after Edward VIII had said that he was quitting, was abdicating, but he swears his allegiance to his brother. We saw that he didn't really, and he nicked millions of pounds effectively from the royal coffers, and that really did cause a friction between the two brothers that never ever healed. And I think that the problem we've got with William and Harry is not only distance, because it's very hard to build a new rebuild a relationship when one's so far away, and then the visits are so intermittent. I don't see there really being any common ground at the moment. But it would be a shame for William going forward if his reign, through the media and everything, was defined by this relationship breakdown with his brother. In that respect, it may be better for them to try to find some sort of common ground, but I don't really see it myself.
So as I mentioned, The Windsor Legacy, your new book, is out now. So thank you so much for giving us a little bit of an insight into that. And thank you both so much for such a great conversation.